Looking at this laptop, you would have never guessed that this is actually an MSI gaming laptop. I mean, look at this lightweight and slim sandblasted all aluminum chassis that feels almost as nice as the Root brand. Keyword almost. But don't judge a notebook by its cover lah. This MSI Delta 15 comes with a Ryzen 9 processor and Radeon RX 6700M graphics card with 10GB of VRAM, not to mention a 240Hz refresh rate IPS panel. Is this the perfect portable gaming laptop for FPS titles such as Valorant and Apex Legends? Let's get reviewing. Huh? You play League of Legends? Why would you even need 240Hz refresh rate? You CS, go away lah. Lol. If you guys are interested in this laptop after watching this review, feel free to use the links in the description below because it will definitely give us a little more support to make more content like this. Also, there's Ramadan sales going on right now on all available MSI AMD laptops from now until the 15th of May 2022. Anyways, there seems to be a trend for gaming laptops to get slimmer and slimmer these days, and it's all thanks to advancements in CPU and GPU tech, which makes them smaller and more efficient. What I'm actually curious about with slimmer laptops like this MSI Delta 15 is, what compromise are we making to put them on a diet? Are we losing performance because of thermal throttling? Are things about to get hot? Is this going to be excessively expensive? Well, let's dive right in. Here in Malaysia, there are two models of MSI Delta 15 AMD Advantage Edition. They both come with a Radeon RX 6700M with 10GB of GDDR6 VRAM, 16GB of DDR4 rated at 3200MHz, a 1TB PCIe NVMe Gen 3 X4 SSD with one extra M.2 slot, as well as the same 240Hz refresh rate 1080p IPS screen. The only major difference between the two models is the processor. The higher end model, which is the same as our review unit, comes with a Ryzen 9 5900HX and is priced at 7,899 ringgit. Currently for sale at 6,999 ringgit. Wow, 69. While the lower end model comes with the Ryzen 7 5800H and is priced at 7,499 ringgit. Again, on sale for 6,599 ringgit. In my opinion, the difference between the two CPUs shouldn't be night and day. I just go for the lower end one if you're on a budget and splurge that 400 ringgit extra if you want a peace of mind. While there is no doubt that this is a gaming laptop judging by the specs alone, this laptop actually looks pretty sleek and understated with an all-aluminum chassis in carbon grey and a sandblasted texture that feels very premium, kind of like the Fruit brand like I mentioned. The vents and the speaker grills have this nice geometric pattern that looks pretty nice, although I did find myself accidentally poking the power plug into these holes here because they are about the same size as the DC input. The branding is also quite low-key with the Thunderbird logo over here and on the hinge. In fact, you won't even know that this is an MSI gaming laptop if you didn't flip open the laptop and notice the logo right over here on the chin of the display. Overall, I'm liking it. The MSI Delta 15 is 357mm wide, 247mm deep, and 19mm thick. It is also only 1.9 kilograms. Relatively lightweight and quite slim for a laptop with these specs, especially considering the all-metal chassis, which actually feels pretty rigid overall, except for a tiny bit of flex on the keyboard deck and also the lid itself, and a tiny bit of wobble on the screen if you shift your desk a little bit, but it doesn't happen when you're typing. So overall, the build quality is pretty good. For the display, what we get here is a 15.6-inch 1080p IPS panel with a 240Hz refresh rate. Playing FPS titles on this feels great. You can even head on over to MSI Center to flip on display overdrive, which is on by default, to lower the response time even more. As a side note, I'm pretty impressed with how MSI Center looks and feels. Screen brightness is just okay. you're going to get close to 300 nits at the brightest as shown over here. So no certified HDR performance here. Also, I wouldn't use this screen outdoors or even in a brightly lit room for that matter. Honestly, I think color accuracy for a gaming laptop like this is not so important. Regardless, I decided to test it out because I'm a content creator and this is what we got. 94.8% of sRGB coverage as well as 69.2% of DCI-P3 is surprisingly good for a panel like this. I'd have no issues editing a video or two on this as long as I'm not outputting for Netflix or TV. What? A man can dream, right? Overall, while it's not gonna win any beauty pageants, this screen still works great for what it's built for: gaming. The keyboard on this laptop has a decent layout with sizable keys with dedicated arrow keys. I'm actually a fan of this nice, thin, but still legible font. The typing experience is also pretty great, to be honest. It even comes with RGB backlighting, but without zones or individually addressable lights. Pretty basic, but hey, at least it's here. Here's a sound test of the keyboard. Next, we have the trackpad, and it's nice as well. Feels smooth and glides well, though most gamers are probably going to be using a mouse anyway, so it doesn't really matter as much, but still it's nice to have a nice and smooth trackpad. This is how the 720p webcam on the MSI Delta 15 looks and sounds like. Kamu gatau, bukan kata sudah berpunya. Next, let's talk about audio. The speakers on the Delta 15 are quite meh, to be honest. It doesn't get too loud, and the only way to describe the sound signature would be slim, just like its chassis. The mids are relatively clear, but there's barely any audible bass, and the treble feels rolled off, so you won't hear much detail as well. It's okay for watching videos with dialogue, but I'd get a pair of decent headphones for gaming or listening to music. Moving on to the I/O ports, on the left side, you get two USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, one Type-C and one Type-A. You also get an audio combo jack and DC in. On the right, you get one Type-A USB 3.2 Gen 2 port, one Type-C USB 3.2 Gen 2 port with display output, and one full-size HDMI port that only supports 4K 60Hz. It's definitely good to see only Gen 2 USB 3.2 ports here because they are much faster than Gen 1 ports. I definitely find myself missing USB-C charging given how slim and portable this laptop is, and maybe an upgraded HDMI 2.1 port if I wanted to say play Valorant on a 4K 120Hz TV for instance. But I'm just nitpicking. I mean, it's okay for a laptop like this to not have an SD card reader since everything else is pretty much catered for gamers. To get into the laptop, you'll need to remove 13 Phillips head screws at the back to remove the cover. As you can see, there's a factory seal on one of the screws to prevent us from opening it up. Since this is a retail sample, I'm not gonna violate it, not too much anyways. I'm gonna refer to Jared's text review for this part, so huge shout out to him, and so please go and subscribe to him if you haven't already. And also take this with a grain of salt, since there's a small chance that my Delta 15 is different from his. Anyways, after you remove the cover, you get access to the battery as well as the Wi-Fi card, and to get to everything else like upgrading a RAM or populating the other M.2 SSD storage slot, you'll have to unscrew the motherboard and remove every single cables that are attached to the motherboard. I think that MSI should have made this laptop easier to upgrade since neither the RAM nor storage is soldered, which is actually quite a huge upside for a laptop like this. Anyways, in terms of thermal thermal design, the Delta 15 comes with 2 fans and 6 copper heat pipes. There's also the option to switch between user scenarios in MSI Center, or you can call it performance modes. I of course switched to the extreme performance for a thermal and acoustic test, but I'd urge that you stick to silent or balance for day-to-day use because it's much quieter. While running GPU and CPU stress tests on this laptop, the middle of the keyboard actually got a little uncomfortably warm. However, I did test this again by gaming on it for 3 hours and things felt considerably cooler, so I think that the thermal design is actually adequate for gaming with these specs. The fans are actually also quite quiet. Only when you're running stress tests with the extreme performance mode does it get rowdy. Otherwise, it's pretty okay. Moving on to the laptop's power draw, you can expect about 11 watts during idle, 174 watts while gaming in Valorant, and about 247 watts in the extreme performance mode when running heavier workloads like the GPU and CPU stress test in ADA 64. Not bad, but also not great. In terms of battery, on this laptop we get a pretty large one rated at 82 watt-hour. You should be getting around 8 hours of video playback on medium brightness, which is very good. Going for 1080p is definitely the right move here if portability was the goal. In terms of accessories with the Delta 15, you get this bag and a 240 watt power adapter. Now let's move on to the benchmarks. Just as a disclaimer, because the MSI Delta 15 does not come with a configuration with an NVIDIA card, I can't really put it side to side to get a fair comparison. Whenever I mention comparisons to the RTX 3070 Mobile, it's purely based on my speculation, having tested a few laptops with this same Ryzen 9 processor and with that particular GPU. Anyways, let's start with synthetic benchmarks. Synthetic benchmarks show us that the Ryzen 9 5900HX here performs pretty much within the range that you would expect. That Radeon RX 6700M, however, seems to be slightly slower than an RTX 3070 in Time Spy, which is a DX12 test, while gaining a slight lead in Firestrike, which is a DX11 test. Interesting. Looking at gaming, starting with Shadow of Tomb Raider, you can expect very playable frame rates up to 98 frames per second without ray tracing. Actually on par or better than an RTX 3070. Ray tracing performance, however, is where this card is pretty weak. Cyberpunk 2077 again is completely playable in 1080p even on Ultra as long as you don't turn on ray tracing. What actually surprised me is how this laptop with that Radeon RX 6700M performs in games like Doom Eternal and Valorant. In terms of pure rasterization capability, it seems like the 6700M is probably more powerful than an RTX 3070 Mobile. So if you don't care about ray tracing and just want as many FPS as you can get for competitive titles, then that Radeon RX 6700M in this laptop is a very strong contender. But if you want ray tracing, then yeah, no dice. Finally, we have productivity benchmarks. Don't get me wrong, that Ryzen 9 5900HX and Radeon RX 6700M combo is definitely no slouch. However, looking at Puget Bench, unless you're only running DaVinci Resolve, laptops with a similar tiered card from the green team will just do better. Outside of content creation, in 3D work, you can also see the same pattern. Starting with Blender, while the Ryzen 9 5900HX CPU is great as usual, for some reason this time, the benchmark just won't work with that Radeon RX 6700M, and no matter what we tried, we just kept getting this error. This is kind of weird considering that it worked with our other laptop that had the Radeon RX 6600M in it. Again, that V-Ray benchmark only works with the Ryzen 9 processor and not that Radeon RX 6700M. So, like I said, not great for 3D work in terms of GPU utilization. To recap, here are the pros, meh, and cons of the MSI Delta 15. I give this MSI Delta 15 AMD Advantage Edition a very good 240Hz hashtag chip by 8 out of 10. So I quite like the MSI Delta 15 to be honest. It performs great in gaming, not only with competitive titles like Valorant, but also with AAA titles where that Ryzen 9 and RX 6700M pairing just works great. Also, given its slim and light package, you're not really compromising in terms of performance while still getting great battery life for day-to-day use in an all-metal chassis with a premium finish that won't embarrass you if you decide to whip it out in public. Hey, don't simply whip it out in public. The only improvements that I would like to see, maybe firstly, is the inclusion of USB-C charging, so I won't have to lug around a 500-gram power brick since this laptop is actually quite portable. Look, I've been lifting this laptop for almost the entire video. It's either it's very light or I'm very strong. Do I look strong to you? Also, maybe stop making us flip the motherboard around when we want to upgrade our RAM or storage. Us gamers are quite tech-savvy people. And finally, maybe give us better speakers? And that is everything I have to say about this MSI Delta 15. If you thought this video is awesome, don't forget to like and share. Also leave a comment down below if you have any questions regarding this laptop or me, since I'm pretty interesting. If you thought this video is helpful, then subscribe lah and hit the notification bell to see more content like this. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok to see more shenanigans from the Mob House crew. Again, my name is Bangsawan Shane and I will see you in the next one.